Hello, this is Kevin Trim. Welcome today to our webinar for our new product, PK Submit. PK Submit is a new software from Certara that's integrated as a plugin in Phoenix that creates a complete electronic PK regulatory submission package. It automatically generates CDISC domains while executing an NCA with no additional effort. It allows users to easily apply exclusions and comments. It remains current with CDISC control terminology and implementation guides. It also automatically configures your NCA, provides an intuitive, simple, single interface, supports all study designs and types, increases data creation and quality. And PK Submit is developed by Certara, a CDISC registered solutions provider, and experts in PK analysis using Phoenix Win Non-Lin, which is the gold standard for PK/PD analysis. So I'm going to give you a demonstration today of how PK Submit works. So I'm showing you here Phoenix version 8.1. PK Submit is compatible with Phoenix versions 8.0, 8.1, and Phoenix version 8.2, newly being released by Certara. One begins the process by simply coming to the menu, if you have a license for PK Submit, and selecting that they would like to create a PC domain. This will launch the PK Submit plugin application. PK Submit is able to make the standards for send versions 3.1 as well as 3.0, as well as SDTM versions 3.2. Today we'll give an example of send version 3.1. The starting point for creating a PC domain will typically be concentration files that could come from various sources, including a LIMS system. It could also be that you have a PC domain file that you would like to augment in some way. For example, you would like to exclude records from an existing PC domain prior to analysis. In the first screen of PK Submit, one simply browses to select data. We have two data files here, which I will select in order to make a PC domain. If I click Next, I will go to the following screen that's involved with mapping variables within the data sets that I've loaded to PC domain variables. For users who are not familiar with the short names for PC domain variable names, one can just hover over the name to have the full name listed under the implementation guide. In this case, PK Submit is recognizing the data that I have. I've selected two files. Each file has different variable names that are associated with each PC variable. For example, subjid in the first file, the name is subject. The variable name in the second file is subjid. PK Submit remembers any previous mapping of variable names to PC domain variable names. I'm going to enlarge the screen to show more information. The variables that are required to create a PC domain are labeled as required. Those variables which necessarily must be used as NCA source variables are also indicated. Additionally, there are variables within the PC domain which are optional. One maps a variable to a PC domain variable name simply by clicking the downward arrow and selecting the variable associated with the optional variable. Because PK Submit will also automate the NCA for the user in addition to making CDISC domains, we allow the user to map in information not necessarily related to creating the PC domain, but that is related to performing an NCA analysis. For example, dose amount, dose unit, and route of administration. At the bottom, the user can see additional variables which may also be carried through to the analysis. For example, period. I will find period for the second data set. Now the application will carry period through, which I may want to use as an NCA sort variable. But at the bottom part of the screen is the beginnings of what my PC domain will be based on the mappings that I've chosen. To move to the next screen, I click Next. There's business logic embedded within PK-Submit that warns the user or notifies the user of certain automated actions that will be taken. For example, the application is noticing that my USubj ID does not contain the study ID string, which is required by CDISC. The application is asking me, would I like that to be the study ID to be concatenated to the USubj ID? I will click yes. If you can see here, my USubj ID does not contain the study ID string. This is the dosing screen, and already I can see that the USubj ID now has a study ID string within it, preceded by a dash in order to comply with CDISC standards. The dosing screen allows the entry of information in a few different ways. Now you'll remember from the first screen, I actually mapped in my dose amount, my dose units, and my route of administration. But that information, if not present in the data, could actually have been entered manually here as well, as I will do for tau. My numlock is not working. The information can be added manually. It could also be imported from the EX domain, if I have an EX domain available. In this case, because I did not merge my dosing information from the EX domain, I'm getting a warning message from PK-Submit to tell me that 0 out of 344 rows of data that I have not populated the PCRF TDDC. This is a required variable for CDISC, but is often actually not present at the time when PC data is being created. This will show up in my validation report, and so the application is warning me of this fact. I will allow this to go forward so I can show you an example of an error in the validation report. The next screen is associated with making exclusions to the data or adding comments. An exclusion could be something like sample not frozen. This will highlight the record in a pink color so that I can see that this record will not be included in the NCA. According to the SEND implementation guide, when I make an exclusion from the NCA, it is necessary to flag that record under the PC exclusion flag variable with a Y and under the PC reason for exclusion with the reason entered by the user. This is not something that exists within the SDTM standard, but does exist within SEND. I can also do exclusions based on criteria. For example, I can take my USubj ID equals test study 1-1002A, and I would exclude, for example, because subject not dosed. Exclude. This will exclude all records meeting the criteria, and we'll have the reasons associated with that reason. I can show you here that I also have the criteria for the exclusion. We record this criteria as part of the study record. So anytime an automatic exclusion was performed, I will be able to see that that was done and what criteria were used in case I made an error in my criteria syntax. One other thing I can do in this screen is add a comment to a record. So instead of an exclusion, I would just like to add a comment. For example, sample hemolyzed. This creates what will be my comments domain. The comments domain is a newer domain that's been implemented by CDISC, not widely adopted yet by many companies, but will be adopted more pervasively in the near future. PKSubmit does create the comments domain as related to both the PC and PP domains. The final screen within the Create PC domain menu is associated with automating the non-compartmental analysis. Under dose type, I can see that I have 2 analytes with 1 route of administration. It could be that I would like to use different models per analyte, and therefore identify the first analyte as IV bolus, while the second analyte, although administered, the drug was administered IV, this could be a metabolite, I would like to use the extravascular administration model in order to derive variables associated with the second analyte. Also under the model type, I can specify if this is a plasma type of matrix, which is a sort of serial sampling model, or a urine type of matrix, indicating an interval of time in which a sample was collected. My time and concentration columns are defaulted to PCTPT num and PC stress n. These variables can be changed according to your internal business practices. Because this is a send domain that I'm creating, I also have the option of indicating it as a sparsely sampled study. This option is not available under SDTM. Of course, I can also indicate my partial areas according to the NCA sort variables that I've chosen, including period, which I optionally added in the first screen. Before moving on, I will show you the terminology mapping section, which again will also remember any previous mapping that has occurred through a database that's installed with the application, but also allows me to manually choose a complete list of all the controlled terminology associated with the matrix that's approved by CDISC in the current implementation guide. The same is true for the units. I'm going to click OK. Once I click Submit, this will automatically create a Phoenix project in Phoenix with an NCA already pre-configured according to the selections I've just made. This is the project that PKSubmit just created. Within the workflow, I have an NCA plasma object, which is already configured, mapped. I'm using dosing defined under dosing options, so that which allows me to use more than one model per single run. And I did not choose sparse, so this is not selected. But of course, I can change my calculation method for interpolation. And I could also, for example, change my slope selector. At this point, I'm interacting directly with Phoenix. Because there's no additional options I would like to do within the NCA, I'm simply going to run this NCA that's been configured for me by PKSubmit. While that's running, I will show you the validation report that PKSubmit created. The validation report created by PKSubmit is analogous to the validation report that's created by Pinnacle 21 or other similar softwares. Because I did not have my PCRF TDTC populated, because I did not have an EX domain available to me, and that this is a required variable, and I have null values, and it's supposed to be in an ISO format, I have this message. All of this is coded according to the FDA rules for validation of CDISC domains. This validation report can be included with your electronic submission by simply exporting it as a rich text format and then open to Microsoft Word to be included with your electronic submission. Just wait a moment for the NCA to complete running. Up here in the data folder, you can see the various sheets that PKSubmit uses as part of creating the CDISC domains. The master PC worksheet contains all of the information for which all of these other fields are derived. I mentioned before, I have exclusion criteria. These can be found in the master PC worksheet for an auditing situation. My NC has completed running, so let's start to make our PP domain. The PC domain is already completed and is here. It's not yet in an XPT format. That conversion happens as the last process, but now I can begin making the PP domain. PKSubmit will prompt me to say which worksheet would I like to use to create the PP domain from. Normally, this will be done from the final parameters that's created by the NCA. If the user had made user-defined parameters through some other mechanism, they could choose another sheet, for example, from a data wizard where those other parameters were created in order to include those parameters as well into the PP domain. I will select final parameters. PKSubmit will then launch a screen which allows me to make exclusions once again on the parameters that were created as part of the NCA. For example, I may not want my AUMC parameters included within my electronic submission, so I can select all of these and click exclude, and then those parameters will be automatically excluded. You can find them again highlighted in pink to make it clear that they've been excluded. Clear the criteria. Again, I can also make exclusions based on criteria selection. For example, I may want to exclude my half-life parameter based on the value of another parameter. For example, AUC percent extrapolated observed. I could say any value greater than 20. Unfortunately, the number pad on my keyboard is not working correctly. Based on criteria, and then enter the comment to say terminal phase not reached. And then I can do an exclusion. And I can check to see which exclusions were made by using these filter buttons. Choosing the parameter that I've excluded. Click OK, and now I can see all the half-life parameters and which ones have actually been excluded according to those criteria. Once again, below, I'll clear this filter. Okay. I'm having trouble with my computer, it seems. I can also add comments to the PP domain as well. You can enter any comment as an example. If I click OK, now I've added a PP comment to my comments domain. The comments domain that was created here will be updated appropriately with this comment. Once again, we have terminology mapping, where all the Phoenix-generated parameters are automatically mapped to their associated CDISC parameter, while other parameters that are unidentified by CDISC that Phoenix makes are not listed or mapped because there is no equivalent in CDISC. Any user-defined parameters that you may have merged in with your data could be mapped at this time and will be remembered on future uses of the system. Click OK. Once I click OK now, I will also have automatically a PP domain generated. And I have a PP domain, a comments domain, and a PC domain. It could be that I would also like to have a rel-rec and or a pooled F domain. Because this was not a sparsely sampled study and I didn't check that box, I will not receive the pooled F domain, but I can have a rel-rec domain. And that is done here. With these domains created, as well as my validation report, the only things missing from a complete electronic submission associated with an NCA analysis are a study data reviewer's guide and the defined file information. PK Submit will create these files by coming to the menu and clicking this place. Now I have a non-clinical study data reviewer's guide, which I can open in Microsoft Word. And this Microsoft Word template has been taken from the Fuse website and is pre-populated with the information that we have from the data, and has some place for users to manually enter information as well. For example, I have this table of my validation report findings according to the rule that has been violated, as well as the count, and the user is to provide an explanation in the study data reviewer's guide to say why they're allowing those errors to persist, if any. So this is useful for CROs or consultants who need to produce a study data reviewer's guide themselves, but this could also be useful in a larger organization for which a PK scientist is making a contribution, so that elements of this report could be used in the larger study data reviewer's guide for the study. We also have a defined file. This is not the define XML. The define XML is just one file for the entire study for which the PK scientist would not be responsible for generating. But we nevertheless create all the elements that are required for the define XML file associated with the PK-related submission in this Excel workbook, such that the person responsible for creating the define XML file has all the information that they need based on the domains created by PK Submit. With all of this collateral available to the user, the only thing remaining to do is to export the domains into a SAS transport file for submission to the FDA or some other regulatory agency. PK Submit will prompt me to say, where would I like to have those files exported to? I can simply export them to the desktop. Click OK. And all of these domains that are currently worksheets within the data folder will be converted to SAS transport files for submission. That is the conclusion of the demo of PK Submit. I'd be happy to entertain any questions from the audience.
There is one question. Can you see the questions, Kevin? If not, I will read it to you.
Please read the question.
If I use an ADPC dataset, is it possible to map dosing?
The ADPC is the assumption of PK Submit is that you will create the PC domain. The ADPC is normally created from the PC domain, and the purpose of which is to create an analysis-ready data set for the purpose of performing the NCA. PK Submit will already create the analysis-ready data set. It's not an ADPC format. We didn't do that commercially out of the box because different companies implement ADPC in different ways. Now, that being said, if you do have ADPC as a flat file, for example, a CSV file, there's no reason why you couldn't load it into PK Submit as a starting point to both make a PC domain and prepare your NCA. However, an ADPC according to the guidelines from the FDA, should be created from the PC domain. We shouldn't be creating a PC domain from an ADPC.
That was the only question. Are you there?
Yes, I am. I saw that another question popped up. Could you read that one to me as well? Or if that was a response, perhaps, to the first question.
One moment. Is it possible to exclude a single PK parameter for a specific subject in the PP? For example, for only one subject, Cmax and Tmax can be reported, but AUCS should be excluded due to missing samples.
Yes, any kind of exclusion of parameters can be made. We haven't hard-coded any kind of way that the exclusions are performed according to grouping variables or something like that. So you can literally go on a subject-by-subject basis. Maybe it's easier just to show that. If I go back to the PP domain. So if I want to go, for example, to the subject, my subject ID now has the study name in it. I could come just to this and exclude just, for example, n samples, or the example was an AUC parameter, I think. We didn't have enough. Let's say we only had 2 samples in it or something, or maybe 3, and you have an SOP that says you need at least 4. I could come to this subject for that analyte, for this matrix, for that day, and say, I do not want this reported, and hit exclude. Enter my reason. Insufficient number of samples to calculate. Click OK. And then that specific parameter for that specific subject would be removed. Again, I could do that based on criteria. Or I could say I want AUC all, for example, to be excluded when PC nom dy equals 1. So like on a given day, I don't want that parameter to be reported. So not enough samples collected. And then I can do that exclusion so that AUC all only on day 1 for all subjects will not be reported. And you can see that this exclusion occurred there. So there's really no limit in how you set up the exclusions.
Okay, I think we're almost out of time. Anna, would you like to come on and say something in closing?
Great presentation, and also to all the participants. We will be sharing this presentation as well as answering any other questions that maybe came in a little bit later. And also this concludes this series of webinars that we've been doing on Phoenix WinMap for the last 6 months. This is our 7th session, and I want to thank everybody for attending. All of the sessions were recorded. They're available at Certara University, and you will be getting a link on how to access those recordings. So thank you very much.
Thank you.